All right, can you hear me now? Check 1, 2, 3. Let's see if I've got audio. Hello, can you hear me? All right, how about now? Any audio? Any? All right, so for the one person that's in here, thank you for viewing at the moment. So I'm going to try to do this every day, at least when the markets are open, the equities market, from 1:30 to 2 Mountain Time, 2:33 Central, or 3:30 to 4 Eastern. So um, we've seen kind of two big up days over the last 2 days in the market, so last Friday and today. And I've got Facebook pulled up here. So this is a monthly chart. I'm thinking with Facebook, as you can see here, this indicator at the bottom right, the squeeze, this basically signal to me tells me that we should see a continued down move in Facebook. So what I would be looking for is a test of 120, but then eventually right around 100 before I really think the selling is over in Facebook. Now, if we look at, and that's something I do actually plan on getting short, I believe. So let me just attach this here. Oh, there we go. Well, I think because I'm sharing screens, it's not cooperating. Ah, there it is. It's on a different screen. Okay, so anyway, with the tech stocks really being what drove the market higher over the last year or so, um, it's sort of led the way down. And if we look at the rest of the FANG stocks, so Apple's just been getting hammered after they basically changed guidance for earnings, so expecting weaker sales in China. I think probably some of that has to do with the trade war. Let's go over to Amazon. So with Amazon, Amazon is really, with Apple, the strongest stock for the longest period. It was the second company to hit $1 trillion. And you can see that from a daily perspective, it's had a pretty good bounce. Now, I look at this white line here as the 34 EMA. I treat that basically as the mean, and we've had a nice return through that. Now, as you can see before, in this kind of downward trend we've had, price did break through that before ultimately kind of just, collapsing once again. So I'm kind of weary of that here. Now, if we run just from this previous high to previous low, this opens up the door for around 1700, so 1679. Now, if we do one more thing here, so from this low to this high to this low, yeah, that's a pretty good target. So for Amazon, I would expect higher prices, definitely, probably into tomorrow. And so that kind of sets up really kind of what I'm looking at for the rest of the week. But let me just finish up here with Netflix and Google. So Netflix, I look at it very much like Facebook, where there's a lot more selling to go. Just from a sort of a fundamental standpoint, I just don't think that there's any reason big time investors are going to want to get back into this long term. Same thing with Facebook. Now, like I said, we had a above average move for Netflix over the last 2 days. I believe something like 16% up, so up 6% today, and it was up, I believe, 10% on Friday. Now, just kind of looking at some of the other time frames here, particularly the monthly, this is sort of why I just don't expect much more from Netflix. Now, if we get a continuation tomorrow, which I'm kind of expecting, I think that sets up for a good reversal going into the end of the week. So if you look at Netflix here, it's at the top of this range. So this is a standard standard deviations from the 34 exponential moving average. So to me, it lines up perfectly with 50% retracement of this high to low swing. So to me, that would be a really good spot. If you share the same bias I do, which is Netflix is still going, a lot lower. I'm going to be looking to sell probably call spreads here. So it'd be a call credit spread around 327, maybe 325 in Netflix. So let's finish up Fang with Google here. So Google, similar to Amazon in that on the daily chart, it's already moved back through the 34 EMA, but once again, very much like Amazon, it moved through that and eventually, moved lower. So we have a daily squeeze setting up here on Google, and to me, that's, a sign of a big move to come. Whether or not that's to the upside or the downside, I'm not quite sure at this point. But just of the FANG stocks, the two I'm looking at right now really are Netflix and Facebook, both for short exposure. Now, let's see, we've got about 19 minutes left before the close, so I will be still kind of watching those two. Let's just take a peek once again. Facebook, like I said, I really kind of looking at this one as maybe an opportunity to get short here, but not ready to do anything just yet. So let's go and look at the indexes. So if we look at the NASDAQ first, so this is the cash symbol for the NASDAQ. Um, let's see here. So let's look at a daily chart. So everything was pretty oversold there, and that's, we've had this big kind of explosive bounce, and the NASDAQ has just a little bit further before we run into the 34 EMA and 100% of this swing here. So you can kind of see it highlights it. But I'll draw it again just so you can see here on screen. So let me grab the tool. So it'd be from this low to this high to this low. So it's 100% of that swing. And I really like when you see a confluence of levels. So I'll highlight this level here, and you'll see that's the retracement from this high to low. We've got our 382, so that aligns with 100%. Aligns with the 34 EMA. So I'm expecting a lot of resistance here, or that is really a lot of resistance, excuse me. So this would be an area where if we do gap up or, move into these levels here around 65, even call it 6,600, this is where I would be looking to reestablish a short position because me overall, I'm still bearish on the market. And I will be doing this with spreads just because you never know. I mean, we could see a huge rally. I would say if this support, or excuse me, this resistance doesn't hold, the next move would be probably into around 67, 6,800. I could just call it 68, 6850. And, from there, really, same kind of ideas that I would be looking to get short again, but with a spread. So if I'm selling a call spread here, the beauty with that is if depending on how it works out, you can always close the side that you sold, and then you'll have a long call to hold on to, if you are expecting a continued move. Now, I don't plan on doing anything like that today. There's just shy of 15 minutes left, and if I am going to do something, it would probably be in Facebook or Netflix. And let's go and take a look at the S&P cash, or the SPX. And I don't have any resistance plotted on this yet, but we can do some real basic stuff just to kind of give us an idea. So from this previous high at 29.40 to the low at 23.46.58. Pretty similar. NASDAQ has kind of led the way, so that's the one I've really followed most as of late. But you can see that with a decent move up tomorrow in the S&P, so let's kind of do what we did with the NASDAQ as well. So we'll run from this low to high to low. We've already crossed that, so there is this other little swing within here, and we've crossed that as well. So with the S&P and really the NASDAQ, I would not be surprised if we see a continuation to tomorrow or into tomorrow. Now it gets really kind of dicey from there. Once again, just looking at the NASDAQ again, there is a lot of overhead resistance here coming in just shy of 6,600. And, depending on how this acts tomorrow, I really do, plan on establishing some short positions. I think this was really just a bounce before really the next leg down. And this all really comes out of a look from like the weekly and the monthly charts. So this is a monthly chart of the NASDAQ. And if you just look at this, this goes back. So here's the 2008 crash. So look at the move we've had since this. I mean, we've stayed for a long period of time at multiple points above, this second standard deviation of 34 EMA, which, is just kind of crazy move here. And last month, December was, I think, one of the bloodiest Decembers, figuratively speaking, the market's ever seen. And we touched the 34 EMA, and that was the first time since 2016. So really, I mean, I'm just expecting a continuation down. Um, I wouldn't really be surprised, like I said, if after we see a move up tomorrow, the selling resumes. But like I said, we've got just about 15 minutes left before the cash close, and there were a few that I kind of just jotted down. So let's take a look at those. So Pepsi was one of them. You can see here it's got kind of this wedge pattern set up. Now it has some conflicting signals, um, but you can kind of see it here. And I try not to base too much on things like this, but you can kind of see this wedge pattern here. And so, this would be sort of a bearish signal, but with this squeeze firing long, what I would kind of expect is, a possible reversal. So the momentum would shift lower. And if we look at, the lower time frames here, there's a squeeze on the 78 and 39-minute chart. And yeah, so if you look at Coke as well, we'll take a look at that. It also is setting up for a move. Now, right now, that looks actually kind of bullish. Squeeze looking long. You've got kind of this coiling pattern here, and what we may end up seeing is a move into 111.57, and right below 114. So let's just go ahead and look at Coke, because they should move basically pretty in sync. What's going on here? There we go. So very similar to Pepsi, you can see we have sort of this wedge setting up, and really it's just a kind of a question: is this thing going to hold on or fire long? And Coke is one that I actually was short right after the high, so I got short the day before the high, I believe, and kind of rode that down for a bit. But um, it's hard one to want to short. Coke has obviously got uh, good fundamentals, but the whole market, like I said, I just feel like is so extended that we haven't really seen the end of the selling. And so from really just that perspective, you can see here on Coca-Cola, it didn't even get back to the 34 EMA, where a lot of things, well, actually, so a lot of things still has a ways to go. But let me just take a look one more time. Yeah, so the Nasdaq, did kind of touch that, at one point last month, where Coke kind of held on. So it may not be a great idea to try to short something that was, one of the stronger ones. So we'll go and look at a few others, Qualcomm being one of them. So Qualcomm, we got a daily squeeze setting up here, a squeeze on a 39-minute chart. And really, I think it will be sort of similar to most of tech in that if, we do have a continuation in the NASDAQ tomorrow, that will benefit Qualcomm. But you can kind of see here, every time we've gotten near the 34 EMA, it's kind of hugged that and then eventually fallen apart. And right now, momentum is kind of showing higher, but Qualcomm actually looks like one where it could roll. In the coming days. So if we look at this just from a shorter time frame, so 39 minutes, you'll see we've got some bearish momentum here. You can even argue that this may be somewhat of like a head and shoulders. So shoulder, head, shoulder. This may actually be a good short here. We do have some increased bearish volume setting up here. Now this is a short-term type trade. So this would only be just for a couple of days potentially. But, I think Qualcomm, like a lot of uh, tech has been hurt by the trade war. And let's just kind of look at this real quick. So if we run from the low to high here, so if you hold control, if you use Fibonacci, you can just get rid of those levels that you've already passed. Let's get rid of this for now. So we did sit down pretty nicely on support there. So, kind of chopped around it here, sat on top of it here. So ultimately really is just, is this thing going to continue running? Let's look at Qualcomm from a little longer time perspective here. Thinkorswim is just not liking this. Let's see. I think because I'm using Hangouts and they're both rely on Java, that may be causing that kind of weird. So this is Qualcomm here from a weekly chart, and you can see that every time it's kind of consolidated like this, we ended up getting a nice bounce. But so this may be just one, there's nothing really to do. Just not a real clear signal. And that's just kind of how I feel about the majority of the market right now, is that tomorrow I think is going to be a big day. That'll be a day where with the NASDAQ, we're going to come into a lot of resistance, and we'll see, is this just a bounce before the next round of selling, or, is the selling over for now? But, I just once again stress looking at this thing from a much longer time period. We've had, a historical run, the longest economic expansion in history. And it just really is hard for me to imagine that, big time investors, so funds and things like that, are just ready to pour into some of these names like Apple and Amazon and Facebook, Netflix, et cetera, where they're so far extended. They've had these, monstrous moves. Now, you can't argue that we already have seen a pretty big down move for, like Apple, for example, after they guided lower, adjusted their earnings expectations last week. They dropped 10% in one day, and I believe that put it just shy of 40% down from the high. Now that's a pretty dang big move. Um, and I just, I'm not real sure at this point. I don't have a good feeling if, the selling is over. There's just so much sort of turmoil within the government right now. The government is still, part of it is at least still shut down. And there's just a lot of uncertainty. And that's one thing that the market, truly hates, is just uh, not knowing, the path ahead. And with kind of a swing from Republican to Democrat in the House, I think that the market is definitely somewhat wary of what that means. The current administration has been very lax on regulation, and that really sent the markets higher over the last, well, most of last year, but definitely the year before. So I really just think we're at an interesting point here in the market. We've had a huge rally off the lows, but once again, I just don't know that it's I just don't know that we're gonna get to new all-time highs here. What I'm really expecting is this is just sort of a bounce before the next round of selling. So we've got just a few minutes left, and let me just take a look here. I was wanting to look at Facebook and Netflix again right before the close. The way it's been lately, you just see, so much of the action is in the morning and then, right there at the end of the day. Let's see. So Facebook is above the 34 EMA, which probably I shouldn't even consider anything. Let's just look at where we are from here. Yeah, so Facebook could actually rally quite a bit and still be bearish. Let's look at Netflix. So Netflix is really one that, like I said, just because it's had such a crazy move. I mean, look at these two moves over the last 2 days here. Now Netflix is a company that, has a lot of debt. They've it's just a company from a fundamental standpoint. Like I said, it doesn't make a ton of sense for a big investor to want to get into this thing unless there's just, a ton of speculation that they may be bought out or something like that. But I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, at least. So really, I mean, today is going to be for me just a day where I kind of sit on my hands. I mean, as much as I want to short Netflix here, I really, think that with there being a potential continuation tomorrow in the Nasdaq, I could see Netflix getting a bit of a pop there. Now, it really does sit up for a good reversal day, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. So, what that would potentially look like is in the morning we get a gap up in the Nasdaq, call it just shy of 6,600, chop in this area, and then we've lured a lot of new bulls in, and that may be the point where they reverse this thing. So I'm going to be eagerly watching tomorrow. I will be doing the close once again. I'm going to try to start doing the opening sessions. Not sure if I'm going to do that tomorrow, but if we can get more than one viewer in here, I may I may start doing it more. But that's basically all I've got for today. So thank you for attending, and I will see you tomorrow.